Chris Bowers is joining the podcast today. He's a three times eXp icon agent, currently owns 20 investment homes, and partners with 145 realtors within the eXp organization, helping to grow their businesses. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on your show. And yeah, so when you reached out and said, "Can you be on the show?" I was like, "I'm down." So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you as well. It's the launching a podcast is, the hardest part is always getting that early content, finding those early guests, right? So I ran across you on actually social media and was really impressed with the fact that you've partnered with 145 realtors within eXp to help grow their businesses, but also the investment side, you being an investment home owner, 20 investment properties. That's really impressive. So I'm looking forward to diving into that as well. Before we get started, though, Chris, I always like to start these conversations with a little bit of a background on my guests. So could you share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, man. So I'm 41 years old now, and I got into the business when I was 22. So that's about 19 years now that I've been selling real estate. It's been, just a really, really fun career. I'll say like it's the best self-development ever is owning a business and being in the real estate business. Learning how to go from 22 to 41 while owning a business. Has been super fun. I've been through ebbs and flows in my business where, it was a short sell era 15, 16 years ago. Did that market. I had a foreclosure amount for, I believe it was Fannie Mac at the time that I was selling their properties for. So, was doing the REO foreclosure business. Then, eventually had a Zillow Flex account for a few years in Arizona that was given to a few people. They were giving us, leads, and at the closing, we were paying like a referral fee on those. So that one year, closed like 135 units through having 14 agents on my team. And so here we are now. It's just kind of a new version of myself where don't necessarily have the team per se anymore. I've learned some better models, I think, from a profitability standpoint of just how to close homes. I think that's something that's important to note as I tell my story is, if you get in the right rooms, you can actually go close less transactions and make more money. I don't think enough of us talk about profitability. We see like the lag measures on stage getting award for something, but no one's actually exposing their P&Ls, their profits and loss. So I went on this journey of trying to get in rooms where I could really dive deep with people and be like, hey, let's talk like real raw numbers and not like what we actually close. Let's talk about what we're netting. So I learned how to build a business recently around just me keeping the transaction, leveraging out kind of boots on the ground, things that I can't do in my busy schedule, and still holding on to most of the commissions and paying some people to do certain things for me. So that's been a really, more of my new version of myself over the last 3 or 4 years. So that's kind of my background, man. So over those years, like you said, I've bought 20 investment homes. I was always one that I would sit in these masterminds and hear people talking about, well, what if the real estate industry goes away? And what if commissions go down? And I heard all that stuff. And I thought, man, everybody's just always investing back into their business. And don't get me wrong, I think we need to have a certain allocation of investing in the business. But I was always a huge proponent of how do I get my money out of this business and invest in what I think we should be investing in as realtors, because we see the most opportunity is houses. And so I'm just that guy that sells real estate, and I make my money by selling real estate. I park my profits in real estate, and that's just kind of been my jam for the last 19 years.
19 years. You've seen some changes in the market for sure. You're in the Arizona market, right? Correct? Phoenix?
Yeah, I'm in the Arizona market, and yep, we've
Okay.
seen. For 19 years, it's been. I think for the last 16 years, everybody's always been saying, when's it going to go back to a normal market? I feel like that's just the saying that people say, and they don't realize that the normal market is the new market. It's always there. We're always saying, when's it going to go back to normal? And I've realized over the years, normal is not what we're seeking. We're always wanting to go back to whatever the last rules were. And I think every market has these shifts where it shifts. You feel like you're super confused for like 4, 5, 6 months. And then all of a sudden, like you kindly catch up with the market, and all of a sudden you figure it out. And a year goes by where now you're super confident in that, the new rules of that market. And then all of a sudden, something comes along and you now got to learn some new rules. We then for that 3 months say we want the old rules back. And yet I feel like we're always just seeking whatever the old rules were. And so it's just been different. And so I've always am looking forward to not looking back, but just saying, hey, what are the rules that I need to play by this year? Let's figure out how to find our profit in this new market, and let's just almost enjoy it, because looking back, I've noticed, doesn't feel fun. Looking forward feels really fun. So that's kind of my mentality on like those changing markets.
Love too that you brought up the concept of a realtor running their business as a business and the concept of gross income versus net income. And I had a sales manager years ago that told me, Jeff, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep, and or how much you can save. And so, yeah, I think that there's a lot to that. If a real estate agent is bringing in 30 grand a month, but they're spending 20,000 in marketing. Yeah, it's a different story. So I love that you brought that up. That's something that's not talked about very often.
No, it's not talked about very often. And I think, and I've been through this before, but I've seen agents that are experienced agents, maybe like me, who've been around for 15, 20, 25 years, and they start talking about burnout. And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's seasons of life, where things are going on where you do feel burnt out. But I've found that the excitement of this whole thing is really figuring out how to like play the game. And like you said, your money's got to get through. I always say like revenue comes through the door, and it's got to go through a few funnels. The revenue comes through the door. That's revenue. Sounds good. That's what we get our trophies based on, the awards or the revenue. It's got to go through our business expenses, and you don't really see what people's business expenses are. You can kind of guess. So it's got to go through that funnel of business expenses. Then it's got to go through taxes. Then it comes into our personal life. And now it's got to get through our funnel of our personal life. It's got to get through our expenses of what our bills are at home, our vacations, our travel. Then there's got to be this section that's left over to invest. And then you got to go figure out where you can park that the best so that you can actually get a return, so that you can wake up in 10 or 15 years and say, I don't actually have to make a commission anymore. I've taken my profits and I've invested them where I make enough money now to run my household. And so, yeah, I think so. When I hear burnout, I think that's somebody not figuring out where to find their profit margin, because like I'm waking up jazzed and excited because I'm like, okay, if I can figure out how to play the game correctly, and there's times and there's seasons where I've had to let go of employees, or I've had to let go of agents on my team when I had a team. And some people can look at that and say, man, is Chris losing? And I just look at it like, if you just focus internally on your own business, as long as you're always trying to find whatever profit margin you're comfortable with, you just got to grow with the market, whether it's super, super busy and you need more help, or if it gets slower and you need less people. And so I've always just tried to focus on that. Like, how do I find the profitability that I want to get through my business funnel of expenses, my personal life expenses, have a certain amount left over so that I can invest. And so that's just been one of my biggest focuses over the last probably 7 or 8 years of my career. And just knowing that like on the horizon, that exit strategy had to be made. And that's why I've made some different choices with my like real estate career.
Well, speaking of investment and exit strategies, when did you start purchasing investment properties?
Yeah, so I probably bought my first rental probably about 8 or 9 years ago, if I had to guess. And so I just went through my first, I think two were primary properties. And so I had just known when I bought my first condo that I owned. My wife and I lived there, but I just knew that that wasn't where I wanted to live. And so I bought that going into that, knowing in a few years I'd turn that into a rental property. And then finally rented that one out, moved to a house that we, enjoyed more, but it definitely wasn't our forever home. And so then we rented out that one. And then after we did those two, then I realized like my wife got comfortable in the house, and we couldn't really do the whole like go buy a primary to turn into an investment. So that's when the game got really serious, when it was like, okay, we got to go put like 25% downs now as like an investor. We're going to stay in our primary now and not move. We actually have to go buy these things. And that's when we went on a journey to actually buy a lot of properties.
What around what time frame did you start not purchasing these places as primary, but as investment properties?
When did I stop doing that?
Or when did that transition begin to
Yeah, I mean,
happen?
probably like, I mean, probably, we've been here probably about 6, 7 years ago. So we bought our first two, and then, those were primaries, moved to the next one primary. And then all of a sudden it turned into, okay, we've got to actually, I started doing some back end math. And so I was probably about 36 years old, and I don't know if I remember all these numbers correctly, so it's just kind of a feeling. But remember, I was about 36 years old, and I was sitting in one of our houses. We were in the pool, my wife and I was like, hey, we're getting a lot of referrals, right? Like, we're getting a lot of referrals, and it's good. The profit margins are really good being in the game for like 14, 15 years. But even though it was good and we were living a really good lifestyle, we were still saving a good amount of money, we were still able to actually purchase rental properties slowly. I told my wife, I'm like, we've got to start figuring out, like at 40, 41, how can we have enough to spit us off enough that we could live where we can not do this business anymore? And so that's where my drive started kicking in. It was probably about 36 years old when I realized, okay, like if we stay on the path of getting like 30 or 40 referrals a year, great lifestyle. But I also wanted a great lifestyle, and I didn't want to compromise my lifestyle to go buy rental properties. So I had to just turn into a new version of myself. So I told my wife, hey, we're going to have to find like another 20 or 30 deals a year outside of the referrals. And so that we can get enough money so that we can park, this money into homes. And so we can get off this return. So I just looked at it like a 5-6 year path where this is how many homes we need to spit us off this much money. I back ended all the math and then I decided, hey, we need to get more than just referrals. That's what kicked me into starting to do like internet leads. I knew that was going to be, and my wife even, talked to me and she's like, I don't think you're really that person who's going to call internet leads. And I'm like, I'm not, but I'm also not going to be the guy that wakes up at 40 years old and doesn't have what I know that I need for my, me and my wife to live the life that we want. So like I said, even though it was a personality struggle of having to turn into a new version of myself. And I just had to accept that I was going to have to, in 5 or 6 years, be the person who said, I didn't accomplish my goals because I didn't turn into the new version, or someone who turned into a new version and accomplished their goals. And I always think of stuff, Jeff, in an interesting way. It's any big mission I go on, I always act in my head as if I'm going to be on a podcast a year or two later. And so like any mission that I'm going on, when I was going and buying my rental properties, I acted like that. When I did 75 hard before, like I acted like I was going to be on a podcast and somebody was going to ask me all the questions. When I recruited 145 agents to my brokerage, I go through these things of where like I act like I'm going to be on a podcast one day and I'm listening to this journey, and you realize you get invited on the podcast because of something you accomplished. That's why you get an invitation, but people listen to the hours so that they can hear the struggle, they can hear the journey. And so I preload that mentality of, hey, what would it be like if I was on a podcast in 5 years and they were asking me how I bought 20 homes? And then I just acted like I was on there. I'm like talking about all the struggles I went through and turning into a new version of myself. And so, I don't know. That's how I went on that mission of buying homes.
I think that that's probably a common trait among entrepreneurs that we may not even realize. I think that as we start to flesh out an idea, and that may be something that hasn't really been done before or isn't very common and it's going to be challenging, we kind of project ourselves into the future and say, all right, what is it what's the story you want to tell in 2 or 3 years from now, right?
It really is that, man. Like I had a coach one time that said, act like you're in the movie, and you're writing your own story. And I know that sounds so silly, but he's like, act like you have a camera crew in your car, in your office. What do you want the story to be? Like, write the script. And like I said, it sounds so weird to say because we've heard it before, but I started taking that stuff seriously. And he's like, hey, how do you want your hair to look in this movie? Like, how do you want to look in this movie? What do you want in this movie? And I'm like, whoa, like we really are able to do all that stuff if we can just find, I feel like it's almost like if we can just get out of our own way and get out of our own self-doubt and just put the action in. I'm really into that kind of stuff. It's just like, projecting where I want to go, but then also being that realistic person that you can't just think about it all day, that you have to put the plan together and what are you going to sacrifice to get it? And what are you going to do to become that new version, which is tough.
What is the goal? Early retirement?
Yeah, so my goal is just I think along the lines of always passive income. So I think passive income, and then I like to just always think of like, what is my passive income number? And I have a number of what I want to make on a monthly basis. I'm not there, I'm getting closer. And so that's what I'm striving for. And I like to just focus on that because as of right now, like I have a simple business plan. Like I help people buy and sell homes. I help realtors sell more homes, and I buy homes. So like when people are like, oh, I've got the 7-point business plan, mine are just those 3 things. I help people buy and sell homes. I help realtors sell more homes, and I buy homes. That's my plan. Any complex day, like there's days where I get into my office and there's all these tasks, emails, voicemails, paper all over my desk, files, whatever it may be. Anytime things get super complex to my brain, I stop for just like 5 minutes and I say, what you just asked me. What's your goal? Like, what are you really doing this for? When I'm coaching agents, they'll say, hey, I want to sell 50 homes this year. And I'll say, why? Well, I want to sell 50 homes this year. And I'm like, really? Did you wake up with a burning passion to go sell 50 homes? Or did you wake up with a burning passion that you wanted to take 10 vacations this year with your wife? Or did you have a burning passion that you wanted to get 4 of your kids through college? Or did you have a burning passion that you wanted to get, your house paid off and be debt free? And I'm like, you've got to figure out how to connect to the thing that actually is the selling houses. Because I don't know if there's many realtors that if it was actually you were doing it for pro bono for free, that they would still wake up and say like, oh my gosh, my burning desire today is actually to go sell a house. So I can say that confidently, and even to my customers or clients, and I can say, yes, like I do this for a profit, and yes, I'm really good at it, and those can both be true. I find that some agents struggle with this. Well, I'm in the service business and I'm serving people. And then you got that business owner who's like, I'm in the profit business. I just run a boiler room, no customer service. I'm like, you can be both. You can want to make a profit in this business, know you're doing this business to make a profit, and still know that you give very, very good customer service and you're good at what you do. And so when you ask me what my goal is, I have a passive income goal. That's what I'm striving for. And so that's where even I back in my math all the time. And so that's why I've even been going on this journey, Jeff, of, I went through, I always say success is sequential. And so sometimes we look at people, and I'm not talking about myself, but I look at some people and they've got all this cool stuff going on. And we see all this cool stuff and we're like, man, like we act as if that all happened overnight. When I find those people or I interview them on my podcast, I'm asking not like they got on my podcast because they have all that stuff. I'm trying to figure out, how did you figure out the order of this? Like, how did you figure out the dominoes of this where it just looked like it got easier and easier? So I knew when I was projecting my path out, and I'm thankful I'm on it because it just feels like flow state, is I knew I needed to sell a lot of homes. And so one year I sold 135 homes. That gave me a lot of liquidity. I needed liquidity to then purchase the 20 rental properties. I bought 16 of those homes, I think, in 2 years.
Wow.
And so there was like every 5 and 6 weeks. That year I sold 135 homes for my clients. And like every 5 or 6 weeks, there was a hefty amount coming out of my bank account for a down payment. These are like 25% downs. So this is an era where like a lot of homes were being sold, had to back in the math to do that. And so I don't even know where I was going with that, man, because my camera was beeping, turning off that I was recording, but I was just flowing there.
No, that was awesome. You brought up a good point, and which actually was the next topic I was going to ask you about. But the first thing I wanted to ask you is 20 homes, 20 properties.
Yeah.
What would you say has been the key to your success as a real estate investor? I mean, obviously, you have to buy the properties right, and by that I mean, of course, you can't overpay for them. How do you go about like narrowing down which properties to buy, and then of course, are you using traditional financing?
Yeah, I think it's important to know because I want the listeners to know that when you hear like someone like me who has 20 properties, which might be a lot to some, and there's going to be someone else listening, it's like, I got 60, that's nothing. I think it's important to ask, like, when was the last one they bought? So I was in a mastermind probably about a year and a half ago, and my buddy he was leading the mastermind. He said, hey, there was a lot of people out there that look smart, but it was just the interest rate. And so I would have to say I was the one who raised my hand. So I don't want to act like I'm a good investor. I think that interest rate was the right time. But I think the question also is that I ask myself is, how was I ready for that opportunity? So when I got into the business at 22, like right around the corner when I started my career, there was like the REO days. I was selling properties for the banks for like $85,000. Like there were people pulling up to like 2005 built houses and cars that cost more than the houses they were buying from me. And at that age, I was thinking, man, I wish I had like the actual cash to buy these things, and I didn't. But as a 22-year-old realtor, I always knew businesses go through cycles. So I knew I needed to be ready for my cycle. There was a realtor when I was 22, had probably been in the game for 20 years with a lot of money sitting on the sidelines. And he seized on his opportunity, but it took him a long time to have that opportunity. So when that opportunity passed, I always thought, what's my next opportunity going to be? And it was that time. And so what was interesting is so many people were focused on the price of homes and they were getting weary of like investing. And I was just looking at the math equation of like, I don't think I'm ever going to get an investor rate in my life again for 3.5. So that's kind of how I knew like success was sequential. So I knew I needed to go sell a lot of homes. And I knew that era I felt like during COVID was going to be a low interest rate era. That was just my opinions. And so I knew like, hey, I got to go sell a lot of homes, get a lot of liquid. Then I got to go park it into these 3.5% homes. and then I'm going to be able to get a healthy return. And so I can't even say, man, that I could duplicate that again. And I've had opportunities in front of me. I would have to search so hard now for a property to find a return that I would rather just spend my energy on other things. And so that's not what I'm seizing right now. So like I now ask myself, well, what is my 3.5% opportunity? If that has passed now and that's not an opportunity, then what is it now? So like for me, I have found a huge opportunity in my eXp rev share. I mean, for that to go to 145 agents in the last few years, I mean, I'll be at probably 200 by the end of this year. What that pays me now from a passive income standpoint is like super special. So like that's what I think of now as like my 3.5% opportunity that I actually think that a lot of agents are sleeping on, and they don't understand the power of, if you can figure out how to help and coach agents, that there's a huge lucrative opportunity by being, some way connected to a brokerage where you get some type of revenue share.
You brought up passive income a few times, and I think that what I love about this conversation and what you're sharing is you're showing how much work goes in upfront to create a passive income career business. For me, passive income's always been like basically what an entrepreneur does with 100 employees. Passive income is something like that a solo operator, solo business owner, solopreneur can achieve entrepreneurship without a team, a massive team or a massive company, a bunch of employees, through building these passive income channels like rental incomes, investment properties, and EXP's model
Yeah.
is a great example as well.
Yeah, it's been good to me. I mean, I think it's something that it's not for everybody, but that's why I said like my success has just been sequential. I couldn't do it. I actually probably couldn't have did it all at one time, and so I knew I needed the cash, and that's what I find with a lot of investors. When I have even clients who will hit me up and they'll be like, "Hey, Chris, like they follow my stories, right?" And they're like, "I want to buy an investment property," and I tell them this is what you got to do. Most of them get stumped at like you've got to have 25% down.
Sure.
And so like even for realtors like that want to buy investment properties, it's either the 25% down that they need, or if they had the 25% down, it's the debt to income ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think you got to figure out like how to solve problem one first. And so for some people, it might be like you've got to get good at selling more homes than what your business cost and what your personal life cost. And that's exhausting because you trade a lot of your personal life to sell more homes. But I just knew I was playing my own game, man. And like, I just wasn't going to be comfortable if I got to a certain age and didn't want to have. So like, I just wake up a lot of days just like super hungry. But I liked what you said, like, what's your goal? And it's just always been a path. Like, it's almost always been a passive income number for like 6 years. And it's just, how do we end the year and have 15,000 more coming in the door passively? How do we end this year and just have 15,000 more coming in passively? And that kind of compounds and snowballs. And as you start doing that for 8 or 9 years, it starts getting better and better. And so I think what I've noticed and what probably feels the best is as that passive income gets more and more, you start being very, very confident, meaning it's like an insurance policy on your brain. There's months where maybe like I have less closings, or months that I'm less motivated, or things are going on personally in your life where it just feels good to know that you have like this almost safety net that like if real estate went away, you feel like you're kind of protected and that you wouldn't just be exposed. And so I'm fighting harder and harder for that now that I'm 41. I'm almost going faster because I realize now that time, like the horizon, I feel like I went from 22 to 41 in this space so quickly. So I feel like 41 to 60 is going to come really fast. And I joke with my wife and I'm like, man, I just would like to have like 2 decades on this earth before I go to heaven to just not talk about an appraisal or like a repair list and things like that. So when people are like, man, why are you so passionate today to close houses? I'm like, I'm so passionate today because I have to be, because if I want in 6 or 7 years to not do this anymore, you've got to play the game faster. Otherwise, I'm just going to be a realtor that sells houses forever. No judgment, just not the path that I want to be on.
Yeah, paycheck to paycheck, right? Closing to closing, and
Not
that's
fun.
no, absolutely not. The 3.5% opportunity. I'm going to start using that. People are going to wonder what the heck I'm talking about when I say, "Hey, that's a 3.5% opportunity right there."
I had somebody hit me up the other day on Instagram, and they sent me an audio message through Instagram, and he said it kind of in a negative way, all good, right? And I know this guy, so I could talk this way. I don't talk like this to everybody. I know him, and he's like, Hey, I just have a question for you. Like, are those 20 properties did you buy? Like, was it just back in the day when you could buy anything on like a 3.54% interest rate and everything was that? And I messaged him back and said, the answer is yes. But since you have me on this like talking, like since we're talking, the answer is yes, you are right. But I think what would have been a better question, in my opinion, is how did you get the liquidity to do that still? Because it
Yeah.
wasn't like the interest rates were there for everybody. Like, how did you get the liquidity to actually do this? That would be an important question. But if you have the money on the sidelines, there's almost always a 3.5% opportunity. So I said, hey, question I would ask is, how did you get that much money to do that? How did you have the debt to income ratio to do that? And then what is, since you've played this game, it looks like properly for the last 6 years, what do you feel like now since you placed those bets? Because I don't think people are realizing when those bets were placed, it was during COVID. The world was a little scary. And so I was like running into the fire while like some people were running out. And so I don't think they remember that either. So now what I'm saying is how did you get the liquidity is a good question. And then also, what is that next opportunity? Because I've just been kind of good, in my opinion, is just trying to seize opportunity, man. Like it's just I try to say like I'm a realtor and I sell homes. Like that is my core basis. Like without selling homes, that's the one domino that makes everything else easier or unnecessary. Like that one has to be knocked over daily for everything to spin. But like if that spins, then clients are happy, money's coming in. If money's coming in, closings are happening. Realtors are hitting me up asking, how did you get this money? How did you buy these homes? That helps me recruit agents. And then that's how I actually, get them to a spot where they're doing the same thing. And now they're making really good money. They're buying investment properties. And so that's how I would look at it for those people that are like, what is the next 3.5% opportunity? I would ask really, really, what is that right now? Because there is one for everybody in their market or whatever their skill level is.
Need to look for that opportunity. Every market's a little bit different and need to keep an eye out for that 3.5% opportunity in your market. You brought up a really good point. I like how you kind of illustrated that in a sense. My question was kind of, some advice or some keys to your success in purchasing these properties. But I love how you kind of reframed that and said, no, the real question is how do you put yourself in the position to be able to invest in real estate? So I love that you framed it that way, and that really kind of put it into perspective for me for sure. Yeah, that was excellent. Do you have any ideas what the next 3.5% opportunity is in your market?
Do you know what? For me, it's as a realtor, because that's all I've really, like I said, that's my domino that gets knocked over. My 3.5% opportunity, it's what I did the second that buying houses was not easy anymore. The second that it wasn't easy, the interest rate didn't allow it to be easy. And the second that they weren't going to give me any more loans, right? Like traditionally, I was going to have to package it up a little bit differently. I sat in my office and I thought, because like buying the investment properties went from me buying investment properties here in Arizona. And when I wanted to buy more, so when I went from 4 to 20, I was sitting in my office. That's where like I try not to get stumped by like whatever the boogeyman is out there. So I was like, prices were escalating in Arizona. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, hey, we have this much money and I want to park it. We have 4 here in Arizona. How do we have this? How does this go further? Like, I want more doors. And so that's where we went out of state and bought out of state. So that was the first project, is get out of state. That opened up things. And that was, that's another hour conversation within itself. But then the interest rates obviously went up. I wasn't able to get more loans traditionally anymore without packaging up and some like commercial loan, which I won't do. And then for me, man, and this isn't for everyone, like that was around the time when I joined up with eXp, and I 100% knew like the influence that I have. And I felt like, and I hope I say this in a very respectful way, it's more of an analogy. There's no judgment in the statement, but I felt like I was like I was somebody who maybe was like chunky in business one day, like chunky, and now I had like business abs. And so I realized like that's really easy in the fitness industry to think like, oh man, that guy was chunky and now he has abs. Like I want to train with him. And so then you just go find the chunky people and be like, hey, do you want to like look like this? And some people say yes. I realized it was the same in business. We just don't know who has like that we don't really know who has that business fat and who like has those business abs. So I realized like I was doing something really cool in real estate. I was having more and more people hit me up and say, hey, how are you selling all these homes? Like, how are you buying all these homes? And then I thought, I've always had this desire to help agents, coach agents. And when I saw the eXp opportunity, I knew that I could help agents grow. And I have countless stories. I have one specifically where, I mean, he was probably making 150, 200,000 when I met him and made probably 800,000 last year, has bought several rental properties in Scottsdale, Arizona. And so I've helped agents, and I don't, like I said, I don't think it's for everybody, but it's for a lot. So like, for example, like in a rev share company, each capping agent can make anywhere from, like in my brokerage, you know, I mean, 3,200, 4,000, like a capping agent. Like most people can't even get a spread of 4,000. Like they can't make a profit of $4,000 to $5,000 right now on a rental property. So not only would an agent right now have to go make enough money, revenue through the business expenses, through the personal expenses, have this money left over, have the money to go buy a house that spits them off a return to make like $5,000 a year, where I can just go find an agent and help them grow and make that. And my buddy once told me, hey, like houses can't recruit other houses, and they can't. I've tried, it doesn't work. And so agents can actually help other agents and recruit. So that is one, like that is my opportunity right now. I think I had 3 people join my eXp organization yesterday. I think I've had 8 in the last 30 days that I'm no a part of anymore. And so once again, people will be like, man, Chris, like super lucky. And I'm like, nope. Like I wasn't. I started teaching classes and people would come through, and I started a podcast and I put myself in opportunities way. It was really ground up. I got an Instagram, which I never had, and realtors started following me. Still don't have a lot of followers, but enough to actually like make a difference. And so that was something that I sat down and said, okay, someone presented a business opportunity with that brokerage. I decided, whoa, I don't want to go start my own brokerage. I think that I could really pull this off, and I have, and that just keeps growing and growing forever. And I will be forever paid financially a lot for doing what I did and the work that I put in. I've got a class tomorrow where I have 50 seats to a class that I teach on how to get more repeat and referral business. I have the whole playbook that I give them. It's a 2-hour class. 50 people, it sold out. I opened up 10 more seats yesterday. Now it's sold out at 60. And so that's just a way where I can get in front of people. I can share how they can go sell more homes through what I did. And I feel like it's the hero's journey. It's, hey, like I tell people when I teach the class, this is I tell them right when I start the class, this is my documentary of how I built my business. It's the documentary of how I got all my referrals. It's the documentary of how I got the profits to buy 20 houses. If you don't like this class, this is just my documentary, meaning it's my life. If you don't like it, that's all good. And if you love it, great. It's still my life. And so I'm just going to tell you for 2 hours exactly what I did. And my assistant's going to email you afterwards all the playbooks. And if you liked it, cool. And if you don't, awesome. And then let's go build something special. If you're with my broker, it's awesome. If you're not, cool, we'll all be friends. And so that is my 2.8% interest rate opportunity right now that I'm leaning into heavy. And I'm really, really focused on it. And I spend probably 50% of my business hours on that project.
A lot to unpack there. First of all, love the fact that you're like, so I have a small marketing agency. I have a certain area of digital marketing that I'm a fairly decent expert at. And content marketing is one of my biggest, I'm just such a big advocate for content marketing. And I think that basically content marketing is simply demonstrating your expertise, sharing your knowledge, putting it out there, and most of the time without cost to whoever's consuming it. I love the fact that you're gathering these agents together in a class environment. Are you doing these in person or webinars? How are you doing these?
I do all the above, man. So like I do in-person ones here. And what's the coolest thing to know is when I told my wife, I'm an introvert by nature, man. Like I'm an introvert by nature. I'd rather probably be back in my backyard by my pool reading a book. And so when I told my wife I was going to teach classes, she's like, whoa, like I'm the guy who used to get like super nervous to raise my hand at a mastermind. And I would like the minute leading up to me knowing I was going to talk, I'm starting to hyperventilate and I need my inhaler. I was that guy. And I told my wife, I'm like, I have a cool story, I feel, and I have the receipts to back it. And so I just want to like tell more people. And she's like, well, you don't really like, and I'm like, yeah, I do get nervous, but that's the day where I was like, I'm going to be on a podcast one day and telling people that I've did this, and I'm going to have to turn into a new version of myself. So I just taught a class. I think the first one, man, like 6 people came. I've had some where 3 people came. Now, over the last like few months, they've gotten like pretty like busy. But like I feel like I was that guy that was like had a pretty cool song to sing. I was still setting up my own guitar, driving to my own stage. looking out at the fairground and singing my song and three people being out there and realizing like your song, it's cool to you, but I don't know if it is to others. It's got to catch on. And I connected to that. I'm like, I'm just going to go like I was like, I'm just gonna go build my own stage and get my own microphone. If someone's not gonna ask me to be on stage and no one's gonna give me the microphone, I'm just gonna get my own stuff and just do it long enough for free where no one pays me until there's a revenue stream behind it. And so, yeah, man, like I do them in person and they're fun now. I get a pretty decent crowd. I did them on Zooms now because I have a lot of people that follow me that are out of state that I still want them to see. I've got now, a lot of classes on demand on my website now that people can go to and take where I get realtors weekly, almost daily, that sign up for a class online. I have no idea. They're just passed around in the social world or given to people. They sign up, give me their username information. I get it as like a lead per se. That's just another realtor in my ecosystem that signed up for my stuff. They can follow me now on my social. They can go on now they know where my podcast is. And I just, it's been fun because like, yeah, it's all free. And then some people are just like, well, where do you make any money off it? I'm like, I make a lot of money through my eXp rev share. So like, even though this might be all quote unquote free, like I get paid handsomely on the back end through my brokerage. And I think if people can just go out and figure out how to do a business model like that, they can grow something really big. I think it's actually shocking anymore when I see brokers open up their own, like people that open up their own brokerage right now. I'm like, man, we got to talk. I don't know. Like you must be like like you must have a longer life than I have and love to like knock your head in the wall more than me. Cause I think it can actually be done in a much more unconventional way with the new world era. It's like almost like someone telling me like, when I hear someone saying they're starting a brokerage now, I'm like, did you just say you're opening up a Blockbuster? Like, come on. Like, did you like really? Like, that's what you just said. Like in the Netflix era, like in the Amazon Prime era, you just straight up said you're opening up a Blockbuster. Good luck with that. Like, try that for 3 years and come holler at me. So yeah, man, to answer your question, I do them in person. I do them online. I have online boot camps, have the podcast, and just, I enjoy people hitting me up and just saying, Chris, thank you so much. Like that podcast connected. I get, a few a week. Someone just messages me and says like, hey, I love that podcast. I had a guy, dude, so funny. A guy who listened to my podcast in Washington State just joined me at eXp 50 days ago. And he's like, dude, I've been listening to your podcast for the last 2 years. I'm like, how'd you hear about the podcast? And he's like, in a Facebook group that I was in one day, somebody shared classes that you teach online. I signed up for them. When I signed up for them, I followed you on Instagram. On Instagram, I found out you had a podcast. I've been listening to it. I was at HomeSmart selling like 22 homes my first year. I grew to 40 homes the next year by listening to your podcast. And then I hit you up and now he just joined. He's like, hey, it's cheaper now for me to be at eXp than my transaction fee company, HomeSmart in Washington State. He's joined eXp now 50 days ago. He's already brought in 3 agents in Washington State that now are with eXp. And I'm like, in what world are we living in? So as I just said that out loud, when people want to open up a Blockbuster, I'm like, yeah, you might want to get into the streaming business, homie. Like you might be a little bit more profitable. So I know I'm super opinionated, man, but I come with a lot of passion.
Sure, sure. That's a great analogy too, VHS versus streaming. That's a great analogy. I'm a huge advocate for that type of marketing, and I've never considered how that could be very effective in sort of a recruiting to grow an agency perspective. But yeah, that makes total sense. I've used it in areas of where basically like, teach what you know, just teach everything you know for free, and the DIY people were never going to be your clients anyway. Like show them how to sell a house by owner. Show them like demonstrate how to stage their home, how to whatever. Uh, you know, a lot of a big portion of those people who consume that type of content are just going to lean on you. Are just going to reach out and say, hey. Can I just hire you to do it? Or can you list my home?
Yeah, no, Jeff, I mean, you're right. I mean, like my goal is to have so much free stuff that somebody's looking at their brokerage as like, what is this that I'm at? Like, I have a Tuesday Zoom that I lead. This is funny. It started off with 3 people. I started it off with 3 people that I knew because I needed accountability. I just wanted to put myself on stage at 3 people every week. Hey, let's get on a Zoom. Let's talk numbers. What are we doing? What are we like? So it just started off like that, right? And then we just started inviting some friends and we made a rule like it didn't matter what brokerage you were at. And so that just grew. I mean, I think we have anywhere from like 60, 70 people every Tuesday that are on that Zoom. Any brokerage, we have several different states on there. I have some people in Canada on there. And what's cool about that is we're all different brokerages. It's a pretty high level Zoom. And how many people that will hit me up after that Zoom and say, this is better than my team meeting. This is better than my brokerage meeting. Like people will go onto my website and take my on-demand classes. And it's not just me. I have like my crew, my leaders in my crew that teach classes on their specialties. And I put those in an on-demand library, and people will go through those classes and they'll say, this is nothing like my brokerage's material. And I'm like, I know, because I'm giving you like classes from people that are in the streets that are actually doing it. This isn't a 75-year-old team leader that's now paid $67,000 to lead 30 agents at this brokerage, this brick and mortar brokerage. Like that took that job because they didn't want to sell homes anymore. Like that's no passion. Or they took this job because they actually couldn't make more than $75,000 selling homes. Like I want it to be like, anybody listening to this, like nothing would be worse than like sitting in some school where you're paying $67,000 a year to hear the professor Larry talk about how to build a business. And I'm the guy who would raise my hand and be like, hey, Larry, how many businesses have you owned? He's like, oh no, like I haven't. I took a class on how to build a business and now I teach the class. I'm like, cool story, Larry. So really, there's no substance to him. Like there's no credibility, in my opinion. People want to hear from the person who like walks up there like me tomorrow when I teach that class. I'm like, yeah, I had 2 deals fall through yesterday too. I got punched in the nose. Want to talk about it? And when you say that stuff to them, they really know like you're gritty in the streets with them and that you can feel their pain. I think that's where people connect to a lot of like our stuff, is that like it's people in the streets talking about what they're doing and helping agents in the streets, and not like, getting the guy on the news who's the professor of the real estate market. And I'm like, and he's asked the professor at this college, like, how's the real estate market? I'm like, you would have been better off calling me and asking how the real estate market is, not Larry who works at this college. And like, he's an economy guy and knows the rates and does all these spreadsheets. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I love that. You brought up, you know, networking a little bit earlier, and I wondered what, or actually maybe the whole concept of what we were talking about has a lot to do with networking, and that's one of the topics that I wanted to ask you about was, how important is networking for real estate professionals? I love how you're like doing webinars, you're growing your professional network through teaching, through collaboration. How important do you think that is for most agents?
I think it's super important, man. It's always good to, I think that people want to follow people that have some authority. So networking to me is just speaking what you're confident about and going and telling the world about it. Like don't teach what you don't know, right? Teach what you do know. So just like find something that you're really good at and go tell the world about it. And I bet you'll help a lot of people. What I'm even noticing more is just how many agent to agent referrals I'm getting now that I've went on this journey, which I didn't actually think that was like a byproduct, because now I look at it as like, there's an agent out in, I believe it's Houston, and he hit me up and he's like, hey, I know you've got that repeat and referral class that you teach that a lot of people like. Would you get on like a Zoom with my like realtors and teach that class? And I remember like getting on a Zoom with like his 9 or 10 agents and his office staff. Like he was trying to build my program for him. So it was like such a perfect situation where like, I would have got on that call and just helped him because I'm a good human being and I feel confident about the subject, so I like talking about it. He was bringing his 3 admin on there so that they could hear me talk about it, so they could actually do it for him. And then he brought his other 10 agents on there just so he's like, hey guys, like you do this too. And so I'm sitting there, but you got to think like I helped a team leader in Houston, help him grow his business. His admin's on there, they're recording it. He's got his 10 agents on there. Like, who are they now going to refer business to when they're thinking of like Scottsdale or Phoenix, Arizona? Probably me. And so I think what stops people from doing that type of stuff or teaching classes, they think, well, man, like that takes a lot of time and there's actually not a lot of money initially. If you're looking at it from like the wrong way, like I look at everything from like a value position. My mom taught me one time, like, hey, don't look like back in the day, she'd be like, hey, don't like this one, you made a lot of money and didn't do a lot of work. And this one you did a lot of work and you didn't make very much money. Like just look at it at the end of the year and say like, did this make a good income for the amount of effort that I put out? And don't look at each individual transaction, client, or task and say like, what did I make? Because then you just kind of get jaded and ruined. Like your flow state, the artwork of it all goes away when there's a profit attached to everything. Now I'm very profit driven, but like if you attach a profit to like every action or output that you do, I mean, you can get jaded quickly. And so I just look at it now like, what did I do at the end of the year? I look at it like this, like, and I'm not saying I'm Tom Brady at all if you follow football. Like, I'm not saying I'm that at all. I'm saying I can understand where he went through, where it's like every year when they get older, they'll say at the end of the year, they'll say, hey, are you coming back next year? And he says, hey, I need the summer to think about it. He's going to go sit on the beach and be like, do I really want to get bruised again next year for the amount of money that I'm going to go through? And I think that that's how I look at real estate now, is like, I've got a certain amount of energy that I'm going to spend in a year, human energy. Like, I only have so much time on this earth, and I'm going to go give my human energy to help people and try to make an income. And now I just decide at the end of the year, what did I do? How did it feel? What do I want to eliminate that just didn't feel good? What do I want to add that felt so I feel better? What did I make overall? And I package that up, and I try not to remember any specific days of, well, that was a good day or that was a bad day, or, oh, that made a lot of money, that made nothing. I package it up and say, this is what I did. This is what I didn't like, get that out. This is what I liked, add more. And was this all worth it? It was. And I'm going to recommit to play another season. And then there's going to be a day, man, where like I'm going to sit on the sidelines for a summer and be on the beach, and they're going to say, Chris, you coming back to play? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't want to take the pressure anymore. I don't want to take the pain. I'm just going to actually just go enjoy my life now and do something totally different. And I'm actually looking forward to that. And I think I love the art of real estate. I love the game. I love the business. I can't say that I can't say that like in 10 years I'm going to love the transaction anymore, but I think I'm going into a new version over the next 5 years, and it's been fun discovering it. Of like, I'm going into a space where I think I'm going to be the person who's, really helping people, building them. Like, I've built a business that I feel like I can look at their P&Ls and look at their models. I did it. Therefore, I'll be Larry now at the college. And when someone raises their hand, like, hey, have you ever did this, Larry? I'm be like, yeah, I have. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, the example of the Larry who's never built a business, it reminds me of how many business coaches I've met over the years who have never built a successful business of their own. It's really staggering and mind-boggling how often I run into that.
It is, man. And that's why Jeff, I have one at 3:30 today. Like, I'm on so many coaching Zooms from people who just hit me up. Like, if you knew how much free stuff I did in the day. Now, one would say, like, where do you have the time to do that? And I have to say, I could sell probably 20 to 30 more homes a year if I didn't get on coaching Zooms, if I didn't go teach classes. I really could. If I put all my energy into that, I could sell more. I just smile when I get off a Zoom and I help somebody. And I don't bring up eXp when I'm on there, right? Like, some people know kind of where my intentions are. That's fine. Like, that is my ultimate goal. But also I tell them, like, hey, if you just stay at your brokerage forever and you have a better life and you make more money for your family, and you just think one day like, hey, that Bowers guy out there in Arizona actually helped me live a better life. Like, I'm cool with that. Like, I don't need everyone's money for me to feel cool about what I'm doing. And so I think that goes back into what we were talking about, is like, when you put this stuff in order, it makes life easier. And you almost, like, there's some people, and I'm not saying this, anybody has to think this about me, but like, I have seen some people over the years where I'm like, man, is it like getting easier for them? Like, is it getting easier? And then there's some people where I'm like, dang, it looks like it's getting harder for them over the years. And so I notice the people that it's getting easier for, they're lining up these dominoes. But I ask those people now, not like, why are you here? And was that an opportunity? I now want to study people. I'm like, how did they line up the dominoes? And that's why I go back to me. I knew 4 or 5 years ago, it had to be sell a lot of homes, more than I was selling, get the money, buy the assets. When I bought the assets, it made my life easier. Then I sold a lot of homes, bought a lot of assets. Realtors now knew I had the receipts. You kind of had to listen a little bit. I mean, I could talk the talk. And then now I could help somebody. Then I started helping agents, and then I started getting the testimonials. I always thought, like, oh, I have all these testimonials from my clients who I've sold homes for and bought homes for. Now I straight up have on my website like testimonials of many, many agents that are like, no, like, this guy has helped me with this. And so that's where it's like, it went from like, but that's where I think, you ever heard imposter syndrome is a word that's being thrown around anymore, almost like it's like a disease.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
almost don't like where we're going with the word. I feel like imposter syndrome is sometimes like people just don't know how to be a rookie again, right? Like, they're good in an arena and now they're going into a new arena, so they feel weird. Sometimes it's that. Sometimes you're just going into a new space and just accept it. Like, you're very good over here and you kind of suck over here. I'm going through it in certain areas of my life. But I also think that sometimes people feel that imposter syndrome because like they're talking about a subject, like me teaching a class on how to buy 20 homes with no houses would be really weird. Like me teaching people, like me being a life insurance agent and I have no life insurance, like that would probably be a little weird, right? It'd be hard to get a crew to go buy life insurance or sell it if I didn't have any on myself. And so I just think of it like if you just lean in and focus really, really, really hard on getting good at something and then teach the person right behind you to get good at it. And then you go to the next level. And that's how I look at my day anymore is it's put your hand, like if there was levels to the game, put your hand down and help somebody get to your level and then reach up and have someone get you to their level. It's a good 24-hour period where you don't get too elevated. You don't just always feel like you're pulling people up like you're some like on a higher level. In a 24-hour, you need to lift your hand too and be like, hey, like I actually need some help in this arena of my life. And it's just a good full circle for me in 24 hours to know like, hey, you can go help people get out of whatever pain they're in because you've gotten out of it. But also realize in certain areas of my life, like I've got some pain. And so I've got to go seek people to actually get me out of that. So I think that's the best 24-hour period.
What about advice for a new broker, a new real estate agent, someone early in their real estate journey, or yeah, we'll leave it at that. Not someone who's considering getting into real estate, but someone early in their journey. It's not really like shooting fish in a barrel. We're not in that 3-year spring market here in North Carolina. I don't know about Arizona. So, things are getting a little bit somewhat back to normal. And it's getting a little bit more competitive and challenging as it should be. What would be your advice for someone that's kind of early in their journey and maybe stuck?
Yeah. So I think the first thing to do is when I'll just talk to me, like when I'm stuck. I think that whether you're a brand, like I think there's a lot of people that are stuck in a lot of areas. Like I feel like if you're growing, you're always stuck somewhere. So I think it's once again, like how does someone process being stuck? Like not what level are you at stuck? And so I would tell that agent, first, get the like vagueness out of your brain. Like there's only about, Jeff, like 8 ways to get business. It's not like, I think people need to write that down. Like it's not like a mystery of like, oh my God, it's not like unlimited opportunity. It is like 8 things, write them down. And like, it's probably like, it's your network referring you business. It's expireds, it's open houses, it's radio ads, it's sending out postcards, it's door knocking. Like there's only like 7 or 8 ways to really get business. And so some of those are more like they're going to take my time and some of those are going to take your money. And then I tell the agent, stop. Like when you go there, like if you don't have the money, spend the time and vice versa. Like don't have excuses for why you can't do this. Like let's just write down like the 8 ways. Like let's write them down. We write them down. And then I say, pick 2 that will cause the least amount of friction for your personality. And just note, I left friction in there because I still 19 years into this being an introvert, have a lot of friction in things that I do. But I said, what's the 2 ways of the 8 that you would want to do that would cause the least amount of friction? And that's where we start bringing personality into it. Like, are you a cold caller person? And there's some people that are. Are you an open house person? There's some people that are. Like, do you have a real, like, you're really well networked in the industry, like, or into the community? Like, you've built something where people trust you and they're like, oh my gosh, you're brand new, but like, you've did good at everything you've ever did. Like, your reputation's solid. So I say, like, hey, write down the 8 reasons. Don't leave this vague. Pick the 2 that will cause the least amount of friction for your personality. We circle the 2. And then I say, let's go. For that person who's like, I mean, I have the calls all the time, Jeff. I have the conversations in my DMs on Instagram, and it's like, they're the open house person. Like, they'll say, hey, I'm kind of slow right now. What do I need to, like, what would you do? And I'm like, what's your 2 things? And they're like, well, open houses is one of them. How many open houses have we did in the last 2 weeks? Well, I did one Saturday, and I'm like, what's your goals? And they're like, well, I want to make $200,000 a year. And I'm like, do you think you would be on a podcast, my podcast, and tell me that you did one open house a week and made $200,000 a year? Like, does that sound like the story that someone's going to go on my podcast and be like, I sit 52 open houses and like I made 200 G's? I'm like, no, that's not how it's going to work. Go do 4 a week. Tell me how that story plays out. Like, stop trying to prove yourself right. Like go do enough work, get in opportunities way where you have a chance to win. Like, I do think that there are some people that just love losing. Like they want to tell you like I lost, and I'm like, cool, tell me all the reasons why you lost again. Like, could we do a little bit more action in the day? Could we get in a little bit more opportunities? Like, could we do an open house every day? Like, You know, I mean, like most people have to go to work for like 40 hours a week to make an income. Like, could you just do 8 hours of something? And so I think it's just, what are the 8 things? What are the 2 that cause the least amount of friction? And then those 2, like actually do them daily, not just like I do an open house Saturday. Like do an open house every day. Well, Chris, like Tuesday, who's going to come? I don't know. But like, I don't think you have any like room to ask that question right now because you don't have enough business. Like, I don't want to do open houses anymore. I did open houses. And do you know what? I'm doing an open house this Saturday. Like I could be the first one to raise my hand and be like, 19 years in the business. Like, why do I have to sit in an open house? I don't know. We got 3 listings that we put on the market today. My wife schedules the open houses on the first weekend. I guess someone couldn't do it. It was in my calendar. I ain't going to complain. They know I don't want to do them. They know I'll do what I have to do to get our company to the next level. No questions asked. And so I'm in it. So that's how I would answer. I just think there's so many people, man, that like they don't do enough reps. Like go for no. I ask people, and I think the funniest one, man, is when they're like, "Oh, I'm going to get it through social media."
Right.
And I'm like, that to me, social media, great, do it. But like that to me is more like back in the day, like when people farm neighborhoods, which they still do, postcards in the neighborhoods. Like that's an asset that like you got to do and it builds over time. So like if you really thought that your first year in, you were going to close 30 homes off social media, I don't know. Please challenge me. Someone's did it. Cool. Good for them. Like take their class. But like for me, I just can't believe that. I say, hey, go do that. Like, do social media. Why wouldn't you? But don't spend 4 hours on it a day. I don't think that's probably productive. And then also, social media, like getting reels out there and stuff, like you're not getting direct no's. And so I don't think that's like the fastest way to a commission check going into your bank account is getting no's from people. And no one's hollering at you on Instagram on your reels and saying, no, no, right? Calling
Right.
somebody and saying, hey, do you want to sell your house? No. Knock on a door. Do you want to sell your house? No. Open house. Do you want to buy a house? No. If you can collect no's in the day, those turn into a lot of monies. And I just don't think there's enough people going for no in the day. So that's what I would tell a new agent is like, I don't meet a lot of people that come to me and say, for the last 2 months, I've sat 4 open houses a week for the last 2 months. And I've reached out to 5 people in my network a day that I know and said hello. Like I just, and they tell me like, I have no business. Now they might not have as much business as they want, but they have business. And now maybe their skill over time and learning how to script and talk to people is going to get better. But I just don't meet a lot of people who turn in that time audit for 60 days and say, here's all the actions I took and I have no business. I'm like, if you said you had no business, give me your time audit for the last 60 days. I can guarantee you probably have not put in the work that it takes to actually close the amount of deals that you want to do. And you're just living in a fantasy land of like what your expectations should be to close that amount of work.
I watched a YouTube podcast interview. I can't recall the name of the podcast offhand, but he had a guest on who was a broker in Florida who had, or an agent in Florida who had achieved a tremendous amount of success in just a couple of years span. And he was promoting open houses as that was the channel that he picked. To your point, right? There's 7 or 8 different ways of generating leads, of generating business. Pick 1 or 2 and go a mile deep into these 2 channels. And open houses was one of his, but he wasn't holding open houses just on Saturdays and Sundays. He was holding open houses Tuesday through Sunday, and he was doing them in the evenings during the week, and he was doing 2 on Saturday and 2 on Sunday. I mean, talk about like, but the results, like it's almost like you'd have to be hiding to not get the business, right? If you go that deep into a channel like that.
Yeah, I don't think people want it bad enough. I mean, I'm being serious when I say that. Like, I've got a Cody who's in our eXp crew, and I met him about a year and a half ago, and he was gonna go work on a team in another brokerage. My old personal trainer referred me to him. Hey, this guy's getting into the real estate business. I thought you might want to talk to him. So I was like, hey, dude, you don't need to be on a team. Just join our Tuesday Zooms. I'll tell you what to do. Like, I don't need to take 40% of your check to tell you to sit open houses. Like, I'm just not that guy anymore, right? Like, I'll tell you what to do. Let's do that. And so he joined up with me at eXp. He sits probably 4 or 5 open houses a week. And the kid is consistently closing deals in his first year of real estate. Just closed on $1 million house like 3 days ago. Asked him on our Zoom. I was like, hey, Cody, how'd you get that $1.1 million closing? And he's like, oh, I was sitting in an open house on December 5th. These people came in and they didn't like the house. And he said the next day I sat in an open house. They came through that open house. And he said, I told him, hey, I'm everywhere. They liked his personality. They liked his energy. He closed that transaction. But yeah, I'm like, when he tells me what he's doing, I'm like, yeah, I mean, you deserved that. Like, You weren't looking for like, I sit one open house every 3 months and I got nobody through type of person. And I think people need to like figure out that, how much money they want to make and how much time they're actually spending on trying to get it. I mean, sometimes it can be delusional, like they're like, I just want to work like
Absolutely.
10 hours a week and close 40 deals a year. And I'm like, I don't know how that's going to happen. I mean, but when you do figure it out, please teach the class as long as you have the receipts. And I would love to learn from you.
There's no dislike button on Instagram. That's a good one.
They
That's
do need to put one on there.
isn't that the
That
truth?
would be
Oh,
funny, man. If
they would
somebody got
what?
more dislikes on something that I like, no, that would be too transparent, right?
Meta will never do that. They would lose so much business.
Yeah, the dopamine hit would be gone.
That's right. People would be afraid to post,
I know, right? But it would be a
as
good.
and they should be.
Oh, that's funny, man. I
Some
didn't think of
people
that.
should be. Chris, this has been amazing. I can't tell you how much I sincerely appreciate your time to take time out of your busy schedule to join this podcast and talk to me and share a little bit of your story and expertise with listeners. This has been really great. Before I let you go, though, share with listeners how they can learn more about you and connect with you.
Yeah, so my Instagram is Chris Bowers _ real estate. Bowers is B as in boy, OWERS. They can go to Agent Excel. That's agent, the letter X, CEL.com, Agent Excel. There you can go sign up for like our Tuesday Zoom where you could jump on our Zoom. It's all brokerages. You can go to the on-demand classes and take some pretty cool classes. But Instagram, agentexcel.com is a good spot. You can hit me up in my DMs on Instagram if you want to chat or talk. And then on YouTube, it's Agent Excel. I think and then like at Chris Bowers. I actually just started that a few weeks ago. So that one's a fun new project. But yeah, that's how you'd connect, man.
That's awesome. I'll have all that information in the description for this episode, of course, and I look forward to tagging you on Instagram when we release this episode. And yeah, I'll check out Agent Excel and might jump on one of these Zooms one of these
Please.
weeks.
Yeah, please do, man. It's a fun time.
Awesome. Chris Bowers, eXp Arizona. Chris, thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.